In a world where love promises forever but time tests its every word, the quiet after the rain unfolds the hauntingly beautiful journey of Anna Rivers, a woman whose life unravels when the man she trusted most betrays her. After 19 years of marriage, Anna discovers her husband's secret life, a second love, a second world built on lies. What follows is not just the story of heartbreak, but of awakening, of a woman learning to stand in her own silence, to breathe without permission, and to find strength in the ruins of what was once called home. Told through cinematic imagery and raw emotion, this story captures the quiet pain of betrayal, the courage it takes to face truth, and the rebirth that follows loss. It's not a tale about losing love, it's about finding yourself when love is gone. Some storms don't come to destroy you. They come to wash you clean. The first thing I remember is the sound of the clock. It ticked with the patience of someone who already knew how this story would end. Every night, when the house fell quiet and my baby's breathing turned soft and rhythmic beside me, that clock would whisper the truth I tried so hard not to hear: something is wrong. My name is Anna Rivers, 37 years old, mother of 2, wife to a man who used to make me believe love was forever. His name is John, 59, an architect with a calm voice and tired eyes, the kind of man people call reliable. To the world, we look stable. To our neighbors, we are the family who waves good morning, who always pays their bills on time. But the truth of a home is never in its walls, it's in the spaces between them. Our apartment smells faintly of baby lotion and burnt coffee. The paint is cracking near the window, and the floor creaks when John walks across it late at night. He doesn't notice that anymore. Maybe he doesn't notice me anymore either. We've been married 19 years. We built this life like a house made of glass, transparent, fragile, perfect if you don't look too close. There's a picture of us in the hallway from the summer we first met. I was smiling so wide that day, sunlight caught in my hair, his arm tight around my shoulders like he'd never let go. Sometimes I stop and look at that photo and wonder, when did his hand start to loosen? Our eldest daughter, Emily, is 18 now, too wise for her age, too quiet for her own good. She watches things. Notices things. Sometimes I catch her glancing at me with a look that asks questions she's too kind to say aloud. Our youngest, Grace, just turned 1. She babbles to her reflection in the glass cabinet and claps at her own laughter. She doesn't know yet that laughter can disappear. John still leaves early for work every morning, his briefcase perfectly packed, his cologne lingering long after the door closes. I used to find comfort in that smell, proof that he was real, that he belonged to this house. Now, when it drifts through the room, I feel like it's haunting me. The morning it all began, sunlight poured through the blinds in narrow stripes, cutting across the table like prison bars. I sat with the phone bill open beside my cold tea. The numbers stared up at me, neat, endless, meaningless, except for one. A number repeated again and again, at odd hours, long after midnight. At first, I thought it must be work. John's job had always been demanding. But something inside me, a quiet, trembling instinct, told me to call. When a woman's voice answered, calm and unfamiliar, I froze. She said hello twice before I could even breathe. I hung up. My fingers were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing. A wrong number. A mistake. But the sound of her voice stayed with me, gentle and warm, like it belonged somewhere it shouldn't. That night, John came home late. His shirt smelled like a perfume I didn't own. He kissed Grace on the forehead and barely looked at me. When he turned away, I saw a small red mark just below his collar, not the kind left by work or accident. My heart beat so hard I thought he might hear it. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Silence is a strange kind of survival, it buys you time, even as it breaks you. Emily watched from the doorway, her eyes flicking between us. She knew. Children always know, long before the words are spoken. Later, when the lights were off and the house returned to its quiet rhythm, I lay beside him, pretending to sleep. The clock kept ticking, patient, merciless, the only thing in the room that still told the truth. That was the night I realized, love doesn't end with a scream. It ends with silence, a silence so loud it echoes through everything you thought was safe. And mine had just begun. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the floor, bright and indifferent, as if nothing in the world had changed. But inside me, something had. I moved through the house like a ghost in daylight, feeding Grace, folding laundry, answering Emily's quiet questions, pretending that everything was still the same. Pretending is a skill every woman learns when she has no choice. John left earlier than usual, the door closing behind him with that same practiced gentleness. The moment the lock clicked, I exhaled, finally letting my shoulders drop. I stared at the phone on the table. The number still glowed faintly on the screen, as if daring me to call again. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I started watching him. At first, it was small things, the way he flinched when his phone vibrated, how he tilted it away from me while typing, how his smile looked different when he read certain messages. Once, I caught a glimpse of his reflection in the hallway mirror as he texted. The faint curl at the corner of his mouth, it wasn't the smile of a husband sending a work reply. It was softer. Younger. Alive in a way he hadn't been with me in years. In the evenings, I would wait for him by the window, pretending to read, the book unopened in my lap. The streetlight would flicker on, one by one, and the night would wrap itself around our building. He'd come home later and later, carrying excuses in the shape of tired eyes and mumbled stories about projects. I wanted to believe him, even when I knew better. Because belief was safer than truth. Emily noticed too. One night, while we were washing dishes together, she said quietly, "Mom, is Dad okay?" I turned to her, caught off guard. "Why would you ask that?" She shrugged, staring at the sink. "He's just different. Distant." I forced a smile that felt heavy on my face. "Work, sweetheart. Just work." She nodded, but her eyes told me she didn't believe it. Later that night, when the girls were asleep, I went into the living room and opened John's laptop. I knew his password, our anniversary date, but when I typed it in, the screen blinked incorrect. My stomach tightened. He had changed it. That was when I stopped pretending. The next day, I followed him. I told myself I was going to the market, but I parked 2 streets away from his office and waited. I sat there for an hour, heart pounding with every passing car, until I saw him. He wasn't alone. A woman stepped out of a cafe, laughing as she touched his arm. She was close to my age, her hair tied back, her smile effortless. John's hand lingered on her shoulder as they crossed the street together. For a moment, I couldn't move. My fingers clenched around the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I told myself I would confront him right there, storm out, demand answers. But when he turned his head slightly and I caught the ease in his face, the way he looked free, something inside me broke too quietly to make a sound. I drove home without remembering the road. Grace was napping when I arrived, and Emily was on the couch, earbuds in, pretending not to notice my tears. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the tap. The water drowned out the sound that escaped me, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. That night, I set his dinner on the table and waited. He came home past midnight, smelling faintly of whiskey and perfume. I didn't ask where he had been. He didn't offer an answer. Instead, he looked at me for a moment, not with guilt, but with the kind of exhaustion that said, "Don't make this harder than it is." Then he walked past me, straight to bed. The clock started ticking again, louder this time. And in that sound, I realized the most painful truth of all: the end of love doesn't always come with betrayal. Sometimes, it comes with a slow fading, 1,000 small silences that gather until one day you look up, and the person you loved is already gone. He just hasn't left the house yet. For days after I saw them together, I lived in 2 worlds, the one everyone else saw, and the one I carried quietly inside me. In the first world, I was still the wife who smiled politely, the mother who packed lunches and hummed lullabies. In the other, darker world, I was a woman holding a secret so heavy it bent her spine. John moved through our house as if nothing had changed. He laughed too loudly at shows he didn't watch, left his coffee half-finished on the counter, kissed Grace absently on the forehead before leaving each morning. He didn't see how my hands shook when I picked up that same coffee cup, still warm from his touch. I began writing down everything: dates, times, numbers, places. Not out of revenge, but out of disbelief. I needed proof that what I saw was real, that I wasn't imagining it. Betrayal makes you question your own sanity before it questions the betrayer. Then one evening, something happened that broke the quiet cycle. John came home early. The sun was still up, streaking gold through the curtains. He dropped his briefcase, loosened his tie, and said, almost casually, "Anna, I need to talk." The words froze the air. I turned off the stove. "About what?" He didn't look at me when he said it. "I think I need some space. Just for a while. Things have been heavy." Space. That word. The polite, bloodless word people use when they're already halfway gone. My voice came out steady, but thin. "Is she the reason you need space?" He looked up then, startled, defensive. "What are you talking about?" I didn't blink. "The woman from the cafe. I saw you, John." The silence that followed was colder than any shout. He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. He just sat down and exhaled like a man who had finally dropped something heavy he'd been carrying too long. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said. "You've been busy. With the baby. With the house. And I felt lonely." The word lonely hit me like a slap. "You felt lonely?" I whispered. "While I was raising your children, holding this family together, paying off the loan that's in my name?" He rubbed his temples, eyes closed. "You don't understand." "No," I said quietly. "You don't." That was when Grace started crying from her crib, as if the house itself had felt the crack forming between us. I went to her, lifted her against my chest. My tears mixed with hers, and for the first time, I didn't try to hide them. When I came back, John was gone. The briefcase, the tie, the smell of his cologne, all vanished into the space he'd asked for. For the next few days, the apartment existed in slow motion. Emily stopped asking questions. She just started helping more: dishes, diapers, the small adult things children shouldn't have to do. Every time the phone rang, my heart leapt and then fell. It was never him. On the fourth night, my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "You don't know me, but you should. My name is Clara. I think we need to talk." The name burned into my screen. Hands trembling, I typed back, "Who are you?" The reply came almost instantly. "The woman your husband's been seeing. I think you deserve the truth." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My reflection stared back from the dark window, eyes wide, hair unbrushed, the ghost of a woman who had waited too long for answers. I met her the next day. I don't even know why I agreed, maybe curiosity, maybe pain's strange hunger for more pain. We sat in a small cafe near the park, two women linked by the same man and the same ruin. She looked nervous, kind even. "I didn't know at first," she said. "He told me he was separated." I stared at her. "And now?" Her eyes glistened. "Now I know he's a liar." Something in me, the part that still hoped for an explanation, for redemption, collapsed. It wasn't just that he had betrayed me. He had betrayed us both. When I walked out into the wind that afternoon, the world looked sharper, the air colder, the noise louder, the sky too bright. That was the day the heartbreak stopped being quiet. And for the first time, I realized that sometimes the truth doesn't set you free, it just changes the kind of cage you live in. The sky had been gray for 3 days straight. Rain pressed against the windows like fingers wanting to get in, and the house smelled of damp clothes and sleepless nights. John still hadn't come home. After meeting Clara, I hadn't slept. Her words replayed in my head like a broken record. He told me he was separated. I could still see the guilt in her eyes, the way she kept twisting her ringless finger as if trying to erase something invisible. She hadn't been the enemy. She'd been another victim of his lies, and somehow that hurt even more. I kept expecting anger to come, the kind that could burn everything clean. Instead, there was only numbness. A slow, creeping quiet that filled every corner of the house. On the fourth night of his absence, Emily came into the kitchen. She didn't ask about him. She didn't need to. "Mom," she said softly, "are we going to be okay?" The question landed heavy between us. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not the child she used to be but the young woman she was becoming. Her eyes carried a kind of weary knowing that no teenager should have. "We will be," I lied, "because mothers are supposed to know things, even when they don't." She nodded, pressing her lips together like someone trying not to cry. "He shouldn't do this to you." "To us," I almost said, but the words stuck in my throat. When she went to bed, I sat in the dark living room, the only light coming from the blinking red of the answering machine. One new message. My heart thudded once, hard, before I pressed play. "Anna, it's me. I need some time. Don't make this worse, okay? I'll come by soon to get some of my things." The voice was tired, distant, not the man I'd married, but a stranger using his tone. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then something inside me snapped, quietly, but completely. I stood, walked to the mirror near the hallway, and stared at the woman reflected back. Pale skin, messy hair, eyes ringed with sleepless gray. She looked older than I remembered. Smaller. But beneath the exhaustion, there was something else. A glint. A pulse. I picked up my phone and called him. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. On the third call, he picked up. "John," I said, the word trembling with all the nights I'd stayed silent. "You don't get to disappear." He sighed, the sound cold and heavy. "Anna, please don't do this. I'm tired." "So am I," I whispered. "Tired of pretending. Tired of watching you walk away and act like I don't exist." "I told you," he said sharply, "I need space." "Space?" I let out a laugh that didn't sound like me. "You mean the kind you fill with another woman's perfume?" There was a pause, long enough for me to hear his breath catch. "Don't turn this into a scene," he said finally. "It's over, Anna. I don't love you anymore." And just like that, the words I had feared for months found their way into the air. For a second, everything went still. The rain, the ticking clock, even my heartbeat, all suspended. Then sound returned in a rush, the baby crying in the other room, the wind slamming against the window, my breath coming too fast. I didn't argue. Didn't scream. I just listened, to the final crack of something that had already been breaking for years. When the line went dead, I stood there holding the phone like it was a lifeline that had finally given up. Later that night, I went into Grace's room. She was awake, her tiny fingers gripping the edge of her blanket. I picked her up and pressed her against my chest. Her warmth anchored me in a way nothing else could. Emily appeared at the doorway. "Mom?" "Yes?" Her voice broke when she said it. "Is he coming back?" I held Grace tighter. "I don't think so." She nodded slowly, tears spilling despite her effort to hold them in. In that moment, I realized something cruel and clear: the house wasn't breaking apart anymore. It already had. And I was standing in its ruins, trying to remember what it felt like to live before the fall. But somewhere beneath all the pain, I felt the faintest pulse of something new, not hope, not yet, but maybe the ghost of it. A whisper that said, "You survived the truth. Now survive what comes after." The night he came back, the city was drowning in rain. The kind that blurred the edges of everything: streetlights, windows, memories. It was almost midnight when I heard the knock. Soft, hesitant. The kind of knock from someone unsure if they're still welcome. Grace was asleep in her crib. Emily sat in the living room with her laptop open, pretending to study. The moment the sound echoed through the hallway, she froze. Her eyes lifted to mine. She didn't say a word, but we both knew who it was. I opened the door. John stood there, soaked to the bone, eyes sunken, hair plastered to his forehead. He looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of his choices had started to crush him. "Can I come in?" he asked. I hesitated. Then stepped aside. He moved past me, his wet shoes leaving dark prints on the wooden floor, footprints of a man who no longer belonged here. Emily stood at the doorway to her room, arms folded. She didn't speak, didn't even greet him. Just stared, the quiet judgment of a daughter who'd lost her respect before she lost her father. John looked at her, then turned away. "I just came to get some of my things." His voice cracked on things. Maybe he heard it too, because he looked down, ashamed. I crossed my arms. They're in the closet. Right where you left them. He nodded, started toward the bedroom. But before he disappeared down the hall, I said softly, was it worth it? He stopped. What? All of this. The lies. The late nights. The woman who believed you. The family who doesn't anymore. Was it worth it? For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he turned, his face pale under the dim light. I don't know, he said. I thought it would make me feel alive again. But now I just feel hollow. Good, I whispered. Because that's what you left behind, hollow. He blinked hard, as if my words stung more than he expected. Anna, he said quietly, I made mistakes. I hurt you. I hurt the kids. But I never stopped caring. I almost laughed. Caring isn't the same as staying, John. He took a step closer. Please. I just need to explain. Explain? My voice rose despite myself. Explain how you built a second life while I was rocking our baby to sleep? Explain how you looked our daughter in the eye and lied to her face? You don't get to explain, John, not anymore. The air between us thickened, a tension so sharp it almost had a sound. Rain hammered the roof like applause for the chaos we had created. I lost myself, he said finally. Somewhere between the job, the years, the silence. I just wanted to feel seen again. I shook my head, tears spilling freely now. You were seen, John. Every day. By me. By Emily. By Grace. But you kept looking past us, chasing a reflection of yourself you thought you'd lost. He didn't answer. His silence was an admission. Behind us, Emily spoke for the first time. You should go. Her voice didn't tremble. It was calm, final. The kind of calm that comes only after too many storms. John looked at her, the daughter who used to run into his arms, who once believed he could fix anything. Now, she looked at him like a stranger. He nodded slowly, picked up his bag, and turned toward the door. As he reached for the handle, I said one last thing, not out of anger, but out of release. I forgive you. He froze. You do? Yes, I said. But not for you. For me. Because I can't carry you anymore. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. Then he walked out into the rain. The door closed behind him with a quiet click, softer than I expected, but somehow louder than any argument we'd ever had. I stood there, listening to the storm rage outside. Emily came to my side, took my hand. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The electricity flickered once, twice, then went out. In the sudden darkness, I heard Grace stir in her crib, a small whimper in the distance. I walked to her, lifted her into my arms. Her warmth pressed against my chest, her tiny heartbeat steady and strong. Outside, thunder rolled like a warning turning into a promise. And in that black silence, holding the only light that still belonged to me, I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my freedom. Morning came like forgiveness, slow, reluctant, but real. The rain had finally stopped. The sky was still gray, but softer now, as if the clouds were tired of being angry. I stood by the window, a mug of coffee warming my hands, and watched the world outside reset itself. The street was washed clean. The air smelled of new beginnings. It had been 3 weeks since John left. He hadn't called, and I hadn't tried to reach him. Sometimes silence is the only honest language left between two people. The apartment felt different now. Not emptier, just quieter. Grace's laughter filled corners that once held tension. Emily started humming again while doing homework. Even the ticking clock, once a reminder of everything falling apart, now felt like a pulse, steady, alive, patient. There were still traces of him, of course. A shirt I hadn't thrown away yet. A coffee mug with a chip on the handle. The faint scent of his cologne on the hallway rug that hadn't quite faded. But those remnants no longer broke me. They were proof that something had existed, and proof that I survived it. People talk about heartbreak like it's a storm, but no one tells you about the calm that comes after. The kind where you're almost afraid to breathe, because peace feels unfamiliar. But I was learning to trust it, learning to let peace stay. One afternoon, Emily found me on the balcony, hanging laundry in the wind. She stood quietly beside me for a moment before saying, "You're different now." I smiled. "Good different or bad different?" She shrugged. "Just stronger. Lighter. Like you stopped waiting for something." I looked at her, this young woman who had seen too much too soon, and felt a deep ache of pride. I think I finally stopped waiting for someone to fix me. That night, after putting Grace to bed, I opened a drawer and pulled out the envelope that had arrived earlier that day. John's handwriting, familiar, uneven. For a long time, I just stared at it. Then I opened it. Inside was a short letter. "Anna, I'm sorry for the damage I caused, to you, to the girls, to the life we built. You didn't deserve any of it. I've moved out of the city. I need time to face myself without hurting anyone else. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you find peace. You were always stronger than you believed." John, the paper trembled slightly in my hands, but not from sadness. There was no rage left, no longing. Just an unexpected calm, the kind that comes when the story you've been living finally ends. I folded the letter and placed it back inside. Then, for reasons I couldn't quite explain, I didn't throw it away. Some endings don't need to be erased, they just need to be accepted. Later that evening, the power went out again. The same way it had that night he left. I didn't panic this time. I found a candle, lit it, and watched the flame flicker against the walls. Grace stirred in her crib, murmuring softly. Emily peeked from her room, a faint smile on her lips. We sat together in that glow, three silhouettes wrapped in quiet. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of wet earth and distant thunder, a reminder that storms don't destroy everything, sometimes they just clear the air. I thought about the woman I had been, the one who waited by the window, who counted the hours, who mistook pain for devotion. She had lived through fire and come out reshaped. Not ruined, reforged. I looked down at my daughters, the small and the grown, and realized something beautiful and terrifying all at once. I wasn't living for him anymore. I was living for us. The candle flickered, its flame stretching toward the ceiling like it wanted to touch something beyond reach. And for the first time in months, I smiled, not because I had forgotten the pain, but because I had survived it. Outside, dawn was beginning to rise, pale, golden, unhurried. A new day. A new life. And somewhere, deep inside me, the quiet finally felt like home. The story teaches that self-worth must never depend on someone else's love. True strength is not in holding on to what's breaking you, it's in finding the courage to let go and rebuild yourself from the pieces. Anna's journey shows that even after betrayal and heartbreak, life continues, and sometimes, starting over is the most powerful act of love you can give yourself and your children. It reminds us that silence doesn't mean weakness, sometimes it's healing. Forgiveness is not for those who hurt us, but for our own peace. Every ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. Droplet pain changes us, but it can also purify us. When the storm ends, you realize you were never drowning, you were learning to breathe again.